Well,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Today, we have a very, very special guest for Liberty Radio, and that would be Angry North, based out of the United Kingdom. Um, and Angry, a lot of folks may not be familiar with you and what you do as far as music is concerned. So why don't you go ahead and give the audience a little bit as far as like a bio and that sort of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, again, thanks for inviting me. So I write songs that, well, and I've been doing it since COVID, the so-called pandemic.
Mhm.
And before then, I'd only ever tried to write one song before. So, yeah, it's all come about since this and because of this, and they're just honest songs about how I see what's going on. And yeah, obviously, there's quite a lot of people now doing kind of protest music or honest music, and we've all got our individual take on it. And yeah, my songs are just pretty honest in terms of how I see things and the way I look at them. And I'm now up to 13 songs, all, as friends tell me, all basically all about the same thing, but I think each one of them's got a bit of a different angle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, based on the ones that I've heard so far, and granted, I haven't, I wouldn't say I've been over your entire catalog. If you can, and here's the funny thing, and how synchronistic life can be sometimes. So you've got 13 songs that you've completed, right? Liberty Radio will actually be playing this interview that we're doing right now on episode 13. So how
Yeah,
crazy
cool.
is that?
Yeah, cool. We're kind of like the same age in a way. Yeah,
In a way, yeah,
awesome.
that's pretty
Happy
cool.
anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. So the interest in music and creating protest songs or truth music, some people call it. Where did that come from for you?
Right, weird. Bit of a long story because but I'll try and cover it succinctly if I can. So I'm in my
Oh,
mid
we're a 3 hour
40s.
show, my man. Don't
Yeah,
worry
right,
about going too long.
right. You've got a very patient audience.
Exactly.
I'll try not to push it though. So yeah, I'm in my mid 40s, and I used to be into music and want to do music when I was a teenager, and in my early 20s I was in a few bands, played a bit of guitar, a bit of drums, very badly. And then, life took over. You get more serious. You need to, feel like you're getting somewhere with work and a career. Or I know, I say you, I mean, this happens to a lot of people, I think. So music goes by the wayside. And then literally hardly did anything music wise until my early 40s again. And I always felt like I could have written songs, but lyrics were always an issue. I just never, ever, any time I tried from being a teenager until literally the last year or so, if I ever tried to write lyrics, I'd look at them the next day and I'd always hate them. Have to be binned immediately. They were horrible. I hated them. And then the way this all kind of came about was a couple of years ago, after spending a lot of time in the kind of economic wilderness and having a very kind of stressful time to do with all that, things were finally starting to turn around and become a bit more comfortable. And I was getting a bit more hopeful that things were going to be okay. So I thought, like probably lots of people about that age, what do you do when you're in your mid 40s and you want to enjoy yourself again? Well, let's join a band. So I did. I joined a band, just a local, sort of pub rock band, but doing original material. And we'd just done our first gig, funnily enough, just again a small pub gig, just before this, thing hit, early in 2020, and then it hit, and then pretty quickly after that, I discovered that my bandmates were all what I call tyranny enthusiasts.
Oh no.
Yeah. So obviously, they were doing things like lockdown sessions from their individual houses, wearing masks in their own houses on their own. So I thought it was a bit extreme. So obviously I had to part ways with them. So I, did that with an online message. They sent me one back, which included the phrase, it's one of those kind of messages saying, well, we never liked you anyway.
Oh,
and
wow.
And it's fine. And the message also included the phrase "Viva la lockdown," which I thought was particularly disturbing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we parted ways, and then I'd already kind of decided I was going to try and write songs, or try and contribute to the band by writing songs. And I'd written one before, which was more just about kind of managing one's state. It wasn't like political or anything. And that was really it. So after, all this stuff's going on, it's been partly a case of, right, this world's so insane. Everyone around me almost is so insane. I want to start saying something about it. I need to just get it out, make something happen, at least put my thoughts out into the world in some way, which I guess a lot of people have felt like, and that's why there's an increasing amount. It seems like there's a bit of an explosion of protest music, and some of it's brilliant. I've got some people I'm quite into and admire a lot. But yeah, that's how it all came about. And then the first song I put out was "Snitching" in the UK. And it's just a really, really rough kind of poppy punk song. But, it was about as one little aspect of this whole thing, snitching, and how ready and willing people seem to be to tell on each other to daddy government, without thinking really anything about what that means and where that's leading everything. So I just thought I'd comment on that. And then, it's just continued from there. And it's a bit of a strange thing that previously I could never write lyrics when I wanted to and when I tried to, but suddenly this thing has given me the ability to write lyrics that I don't completely hate when I look at them the next day. And yeah, they're basically just, like I say, very honest, and I mean what I say. So yeah, silver linings. Awesome. It's hard to say about any of this, but yeah, that's the kind of story.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds to me, very similar to what I've heard from, other people as they have encountered the work that would become, essentially their great work or their life's work, where it was just something that, kind of came about because of the circumstances that were brought to bear upon them at a particular moment in time. And it was their response to those circumstances that kind of got them started on their journey. I know in our correspondence on Twitter, of course, you mentioned that you're familiar with Richard Grove's work, which of course Liberty Radio would not exist without the work of Richard Grove. But he also talks about the same kind of journey, and how how circumstances will create this for folks, and it a lot of times can come from the most unlikely of circumstances.
Yeah, and often kind of need or necessity or adversity in one way or another bring good things out of people and teams and things. So yeah, I heard, I don't know if you come across a guy called Darren Nesbitt, known as Daz Nez.
Sounds familiar.
Does it? Yeah, he's the guy. Have you heard of the 99% song? We Are the 99%. It's kind of based on the tune of She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain. Yeah. I heard him being interviewed by Gareth Icke on their thing, Iconic, and yeah, he was just commenting on the fact that with this, the size of this, obviously monumental, unthinkable size of this whole scam and what's being done in its name,
mm-hmm.
It's and the fact that there's a resistance movement growing, in response to it, it's bound to produce its own culture and its own art, if you like. So yeah, it's hard to think of many upsides, but I guess you could say there's a bit of one there.
Yeah, I would definitely call that an upside. Well, from my perspective, I would call it an upside, and that's just because I've always been a person who has enjoyed music, and especially music that is well crafted, which I think, at least for again what I've been exposed to of your work, I find a lot of value in what you have produced so far.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I think it's hard. Yeah, in a way, I feel like it's almost too hopeful and maybe a little bit arrogant to say it's an upside even, or it's doing any good. But if I kind of, what I do hope is that, like, the more of it there is, I feel like it might, and this is the only thing I feel like you could reasonably hope, is that it gives the people who are who do see the scam and who are resistant to it, it gives them a little bit of a feeling like they're less alone, and like there's other people that, they're not insane. There is more of a, it kind of adds to the overall voice of resistance and awareness and sanity, because obviously the mainstream media and corrupt governments and everything, they've got plenty of voice, plenty of reach, plenty of bandwidth in terms of culture, news, and supposed news, and all the rest of it. So this just adds to the voice of the alternative view, doesn't it? Which is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, it does. So people like to reference and again, we've already touched a little bit on some of the bigger players, and I guess everybody has their different name for what's happening. I've heard Great Awakening. I've heard even the word apocalypse being used, because again, it's another reference to awakening. But folks like Richard Grove, folks like Gareth and David Icke, we can even, we can even throw Alex Jones in there. Why not? But people like to reference these things called red pill moments, and in my mind, it's become kind of almost like this. It's achieved like a monolithic stature. This red pill term, right? It's almost like people think there's just this moment that happens where it all clicks in your brain, and the pieces all fall into place, and everything starts making sense. Which there is an element to that for a lot of us, I think. But I also think it's more complicated than that, and it's something that takes place over a long period of time. So with that said, what was it that caused you to start looking at the world, a little bit more critically, and maybe starting to understand that, what you were being taught in school, and, what was being put forth by the media maybe wasn't, exactly the truth, if it was even the truth at all? Like, how did that all get started for you?
Okay, I'm a bit of an old timer in terms of this, you could say. I actually saw David Icke speaking in 1996, so over 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So at that time, he was a real figure of ridicule. Obviously, he still is in the mainstream. In the UK, he'd had this sort of weird term where he'd done an interview on a program called Wogan, and said some things that were probably unwise, or were sounded a bit crazy, and were bound to go down badly. So, and a couple of friends of mine.
Was that the lizard people comment?
No. It was way
okay.
before that. It was way before
Oh,
that.
wow.
He got on
Okay.
and said, basically, it had been interpreted that what he said was that I'm the son of God. But I think he
Okay.
later explained that as being like, well, I meant we're all sons of God. I don't know. Anyway, I had no interest in going along. Some friends of mine wanted to go because they were curious, and it was a tiny little hall, like a town hall kind of. I think it was like a side room off a library, actually. Anyway, I at that point he wasn't talking about lizards. It was pre all that, and he was just talking about Bilderberg groups, and the Bilderberg group, and Freemasonry, and various Trilateral Commission, various secret societies, and so on, and the general kind of hidden hand, and the general goal of, one world government, the new world order, microchip population, all this stuff, and the kind of general long-term creep towards that situation. And obviously concepts like problem, reaction, solution, and the totalitarian tiptoe of, you go a few steps forward, then you retreat a little bit, and then and all these things, and actually walking away from that, I was like, nah, that's the last thing I wanted to, so I was a young chap, and I had no interest in finding a problem or something to disempower me or make me worried about or anything like that. So the last thing I wanted, and I walked away and was thinking, no, but it was a few conversations with those friends afterwards and over a few weeks where I suddenly started to think, yeah, okay, there's something here. And then I got more into it from there on. I'm not a David Icke disciple by any stretch. And I mean, that led me on to lots of other things. I've spent a lot of time listening to Alex Jones in the early noughties, but loads and loads and loads of other people. And like you said, it's a process. It's more complicated. So yeah, Richard Grove, Stefan Molyneux, spent a lot of time listening to him. Lots of kind of real money people, you could say, gold and silver people, and people talking about the general economic and money scam, and then just general liberty, minarchism, libertarianism, anarchy. People that talk about those ideas followed a lot of those as well. So yeah, it's been a process, but it kind of, I could say, it all kind of started with David Icke. And yeah, on his whole, some people have the view that if there's one thing that someone says that they find hard to imagine being true, like lizards, like the moon's this or that, that everything else they say should be discounted. And I don't know about lizards or these other things, but enough of what David Icke was talking about back then was so clearly, documented and evidenced. And I looked into it and checked it out. And since then, there are millions of people talking about similar things. So yeah, I don't.
And they're not even talking about lizard people or what the moon's made out of. They're just touching on those things that we can actually tangibly observe in our world that anybody can.
Yeah, especially now, isn't it strange how much of what's going on can be clearly seen and documented, and there are just so many clear red flags about all of this, and yet you've got whatever percent of the population, the majority, it seems, completely unwilling to look at it or consider it. Like I'm a big fan of James Corbett as well. And look at his. I know Richard Grove's done a few interviews with him. Look at his documentary on Bill Gates. I often think to myself, if anybody, including these, sheeple in extreme, determined denial, I really think to myself, if you watch that, how could you possibly say there's nothing to worry about regarding Bill Gates and his influence on global health policy? Yeah. How could anyone possibly look at that and dismiss and just say, no, none of that's anything to worry about? So yeah, it's a frustrating time, isn't it? That's
yeah, it certainly is. And I don't know, I think one of the most frustrating things for me, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well, is as more time has gone by, and especially since I've spent more time being focused on watching the public narrative that is created and disseminated by the mass media to the population, the more convinced that I have become that not only right now are these people that we call the media, and again, I'm talking about the media corporations, not necessarily folks in independent media like James Corbett, James Evan Pilato, Richard Grove. I think these are the people who are actually doing the real work. as far as communication is involved right now. But your Foxes, your CNNs, your BBCs, Sky News, like all these corporations, they're just straight up lying to us, right? And we can tell that they're lying to us. And more than likely, they've been doing this for a long, long time, like decades, or maybe even centuries.
Yeah.
So, like, if it's for those of us who are on this side of the curtain, right? If it's so easy for us to see that the media is just outright lying to us, why is it so difficult for the people who don't see it? Like, and again, it could be because I exist in a little bit more of a bubble as far as that is concerned. I don't interact a whole lot with the people who are drinking the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But so my question is, I'm curious of the people, since you're over in the United Kingdom in a completely different country, the people that you come into contact with on a daily basis, what kind of impressions are you getting from them about how much belief they're investing into what the media is telling them?
Right, that's a big question, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, it's obviously a very, very divided world, and I spend quite a lot of time trying to think and trying to identify with the thinking of the masses, because it's a curiosity-provoking thing, isn't it? Like, what is going on in their heads? I'm quite interested in psychology, and I've been for a while, but obviously I'm no expert. I just try and sometimes relate to it, and I think in a way it's kind of easy to relate to it, because we were all kind of like that once, although it's hard to imagine being like that now. But I think there were some real clear human tendencies, biases and kind of just psychological weaknesses that are used against us and used against people. And some of the biggest ones are just really clear things like thinking shortcuts, heuristics, making connections, and obviously the tendency people have to defer to authority blindly, and they've got such trust and see the government and like trusted to them institutions like the BBC almost as like parent figures. This thing that's come up recently as well, that's kind of hit the internet in a big way, this mass formation point. I think it reminds me a little bit of the last few years as well. Followed a fair bit of Jordan Peterson and what he said, and through him a few years ago I got to read Ordinary Men, about the what's it called, the middle-aged blokes who were kind of reserve police battalion members who were sent to basically do loads of killing in Poland. And they're very much ordinary people, and how they went ahead and did it, and that the responses to them were all split into different groups. But that was there are all these examples of, like Jordan Peterson says, the people who will actually stand up and say no to a request to do an evil deed are actually very rare. And I kind of think, well, yeah, if history's shown us that, we're all potentially, prison camp guards. That tells me we should all ask ourselves, do I have that potential to be? Would I blindly and, obediently obey authority, even if it meant doing what I knew was wrong? Then we should all decide, well, I'm not going to be like that. I want to be better. I want to be different than that. We should all do that. When I was growing up, I don't know about you, but people were still talking about the war, the Second World War, and still talking about Hitler and the Nazi movement quite a lot.
Mm.
And it was all that, well, we must never let it happen again. We must never let it happen again.
Well, I'll just, and again, I don't mean to interrupt you there, because I like where you're going and I want you to continue with that thought. But I think that it kind of illustrates a little bit of the cultural difference between our countries. Because while, over in Europe and the United Kingdom, I have no doubt that it was World War II that was very much on everybody's minds, because I mean, that was the theater of the conflict, was right there on that continent. But as you're saying, because I think we're probably about the same age, I'll be 50 here in just a couple of years. When I was growing up here in the United States, what was on everybody's mind, and I think it'll be pretty obvious when I finally get the words out of my mouth here, is everybody was talking about the Vietnam War. But it was very much the same sentiment of, this was a horrible thing and we can't ever let this happen again.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's been some. I think obviously the last couple of decades in particular, generations that have come up, really in the internet and never not knowing the internet. There's been an incredible dumbing down job, hasn't there, where people don't question authority and they don't question themselves, and they are being told that by embracing all of the kind of woke, the aspects of woke culture, inclusivity, that many things that actually connect with maybe the ending of the traditional family unit and all that kind of thing. But by being inclusive and by saying, yes, this is good, that's all, let's all be inclusive, they think they're being good people. Obviously they're not seeing the other side of that, and how it's
right.
It also ties in with management, top-down management by government of their speech and thought and values and everything. But yeah, I think there's been a massive dumbing down job done, and yeah, people do not think it's the right thing to do to question authority. They do not value freedom of speech, and obviously freedom of speech is only freedom of speech if it's freedom for everyone to speak, and including people you don't agree with. And all of these basic principles have been lost, or just, they've been, the young people now, generally, most of them would actively disagree with those points. They'd actively say, no, not freedom of speech, that's hate speech, that needs to be shut down. That's the right thing to do, not freedom, So yeah, it's kind of an ugly situation, but yeah, there's no. I'm sorry, your question was a really big one, wasn't it? And I'm just going to waffle any more if I carry on speaking.
Oh no, don't worry, because I think your answer was fantastic, and I can't even remember what the original intent behind my question was. I was just enthralled with what you were saying. But I think what it does is it illustrates a very important point that is probably something that's on a lot of people's minds these days, and hopefully a lot of the folks that are listening to this interview right now. And that is that there has been this gradual process to essentially erode the liberties that previous generations had fought so valiantly to secure, or at least that's the story that we were told growing up, right? That we had these inalienable rights that even government couldn't take away from us. And the generations that are coming up now don't seem to hold these same values. And it almost seems to me, and again, maybe I'm thinking about this too much. Maybe it's just because of this is the particular way that I tend to analyze things. But it seems like there's this confrontation that's being set up between this older set of ideals and this newer generation that seems to think that those ideals maybe just don't apply anymore because of what they're being taught in school and so on and so forth. And to me, that it kind of stinks of Hegelian dialectic. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it does seem that most, I mean, in the UK, I don't know if you got the yellow board protests or you've
Oh yeah.
seen them. You do, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we have to scour the internet to find them. But yeah, they are still available.
right. So I've been along to a few of those yellow board protests, and we have this thing called Stand in the Park as well, where just people who want to resist what's going on and they want to make plans to be able to live without engaging any more than they have to with the system. People meet up in parks all over the UK on a Sunday, and I've been along to a few of those, and yeah, there's definitely a lot more older people than younger people. I think there are people trying actively to reach out to younger people, including school kids. There's a fantastic guy here in the UK called Rameece, and maybe if you could get him on your show, that would be fantastic. So it's Remeece.
Look into it.
He's done a few songs. What he does is he goes out seemingly on a very regular basis. He goes out to schools and he sings mainly his song "Don't Take the Vaccine" to kids, but kids seem to respond very well to him, and he seems to be making a bit of a difference, judging by the comments from kids you see after he's done his kind of sessions. So there are people trying to increase awareness among kids, and of course, if you go to like a big protest, you do see some groups of kids, and I saw as well, even on a mainstream site recently, some news about some kids. I think it was up in the northwest where I come from originally, who were just en masse refusing to wear masks. So I think there's some aspect of younger people and kids waking up to some degree. It's not happening as fast as I wish it would, and I don't know if it's going to happen fast enough to make a difference, but it seems there is a disparity there, and hopefully it's beginning to even out a bit, as so you mentioned awakening there, I think at one point, in the sense of a kind of mass awakening. Do you think there's how do you feel it's going over there? Do you feel like generally people are the number of there are people who were previously 2 years ago they were asleep, and now they're really quite aware? Do you think there's a lot of that, or not so much?
I think, well, so kind of back to one of my earlier questions, I do think that the media is straight up lying to us in terms of a great many things. One of those lies that I think that they're telling is the vaccination numbers. Because even with the complete strangers that I may meet and talk to, if the subject comes up, people that I encounter are more likely to be vocal about having not been vaccinated as opposed to having been vaccinated. So I think there's definitely a psychological manipulation factor as far as all that stuff is concerned. But as far as the general population here in the United States, again, it's kind of difficult to gauge sometimes, I think, because we're, and it's difficult to know how much of this is actually true, but we're kind of different from most of the other democratic nations in the rest of the world. So there's always kind of been this sense among Americans that, regardless of whatever happens, we're going to be a free and independent people. So and this is a really kind of a roundabout way to give you the answer that you're looking for, but I think that there are more people in this country that are aware of the game that is being played now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the overt tyranny that has been perpetrated, not just in this country, but around the world over the course of the last 24 months or so with the whole scamdemic and the narrative that goes along with that. But I think the problem that we keep running into here in the United States, and it's probably a pervasive problem throughout the world, is that even though people can recognize it. And even though people can call it by name, they don't know what to do about it, and they kind of feel powerless in the face of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And maybe tied in with that in some cases, but a kind of separate problem is, I guess, a degree of naivety along the lines of, well, if we just get rid of Boris,
Mm.
or, you know, if we just get this particular thing, if we just get the mandates, if we just get the masks, if we just get this or that sorted, then and get some decent people in power, then and I think they're missing. I think there's a lot of people who consider themselves awake who are unfortunately missing some pretty key principles that, if they're not covered and addressed, aren't really going to lead to any real change.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think, you know, and also a friend of mine earlier today used this brilliant word I haven't heard before: hopium.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that?
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that. And again, it's just one of those crazy synchronicities of life. I was actually having a conversation with a family member last night, as a matter of fact, and they had never heard the word hopium before. So I started, explaining the concept to them, and pointed out, I think it was actually James Corbett that I first heard talking about this about a year or so ago at this time.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny word. It raises a smile. So yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot of hopium being purposefully distributed, and a lot of people who lap it up because they still, they can see they're abused and they don't want to be abused, but they still want to be looked after, and they still really see that as the job of the government to look after them. And a lot of these people, still fall for things like the climate scam. And another friend of mine, we were talking about the fact that here in the UK, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday Boris announced some big easing of restrictions. So, no more masks in schools. And
believe it or not, it has been headline news here in the States, at least in the independent media.
Okay. Now, to me, that's just, a friend of mine used the phrase tactical pause, and that's what I see it as. It's and then somebody else on Twitter, what did they say? They said it's like any form of abuse. It's slap, stroke, and this is a stroke, and we're just waiting for the next slap. And David Icke would have said, totalitarian tiptoe. They're just taking a step back before again an onward march. That's the reality. That's how I see it, and that's what I think people need to be aware of. But some other people, another person on Twitter was saying, "Oh no, this is the end of it, and there's no catch." And this is because they didn't use this phrase, but you hear people talking about things like, the light beings are coming to save us, and they go a bit kind of metaphysical and maybe interplanetary and all this kind of thing. And again, I think that I don't rule anything out. I don't know if there's other life forms on other planets. It quite possibly is, and other energy levels and other beings and other frequencies and dimensions and blah blah blah. I'm open to any of that, but I think personally, that we got a better chance. I think we got the only chance of freedom and liberty and grabbing that for ourselves by recognizing the nature of government. And therefore insisting that to whatever degree it exists, it needs to be limited. Its remit needs to be limited. Its size needs to be limited. We shouldn't trust it or go to it or hope for it to solve problems, because all it will ever do is find problems and then make them worse, or invent problems and then make them worse. Tax us to death, control us, siphon off wealth to powerful friends, and blah 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 blah. And that people just understood the nature of that, and the fact that they can never expect to be told the truth by government. And of course that's what the climate scam's all there to do, isn't it? Sort of convince people that they need to be governed harder, daddy. You know, with the excuse of so if, you know, to me, I don't know, you know, much, and I don't claim to have any designs for a perfect world, but I think in some ways some principles are kind of true, are kind of obvious and clear to me, and I think they're right. But you know, we've all got our own takes on things, and you just say what you think, don't you? At least while you've got a chance to say what you think.
Right. While you've got a chance, I think that's the most important thing. And of course, that's kind of the whole impetus behind Liberty Radio to begin with, is to be able to provide that platform for people to say those things that are on their mind while they still have a chance to do it. Now, I don't want to take up all of your evening, because I'm sure you probably worked very hard today and would like to have a chance to relax before turning in for the night. But I do have one last question for you before I let you go, Angry. And this one might throw you for a little bit of a loop, so let me know if it does. But if we were in a perfect world, all right, and again, I hate using that term, but I think it's appropriate to kind of set up the question. You know, if we were able to eliminate all of the tyranny that exists in our world today, if it literally disappeared overnight, and you woke up tomorrow morning and it was completely gone, and you were free to live your life however you wanted to, would you continue making music?
Yeah, I would now. Yeah. It's tricky. I'd have to think about something to write about, which I'd be happy to do. Happy to do. But yeah, I think I was probably going to get on the path anyway. So yeah, I think I would. That's the answer.
Awesome.
But
I'm
I'm
glad to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. I think you know, it's a journey, and I think I'm, you know, learning a bit more, because you know, what I do isn't the most professional. Every song that I've done, I think could be a lot better, and I do them in a bit of a hurry, and I'm, you know, doing it around work, and I do every you know, I do all the stuff, recording and the videos as far as they go, myself. But I think they're getting better. It's a bit of a journey, and I'm hopefully going to make things sound a bit more professional going forward.
Well, excellent. Because I'm really excited to see what you're going to be able to create in the future. And I'll just let you know, from my own point of view, what you are producing at the moment is way more professional than what Liberty Radio has produced up to this point. So just understand that as creators, we're all very critical of our own work, and that, I think, it just kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah. I don't know about it. Are you doing music and music videos?
No,
No, you
we literally
just
just do a 3-hour pirate radio show every week, and it's kind of stitched together all at the last minute. You know, all the stuff that we have in the show is created by myself and my co-host, and we're literally just flying by the seat of our pants as we go.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that is the trick and the approach, isn't it? That you need to have with so many things. You know, you just get on and do it, and you find your way, and you make little improvements every time you do something, every time you do a show, every time you do a song, whatever it is, rather than, you know, trying to aim for perfection, you know, from the off. So yeah, like something that, you know, someone like Tony Robbins would probably say, isn't it? You know, just do it, get it going, get it moving, and then keep improving incrementally.
Yeah,
incrementally, like elite style takeover.
it's a nice
in a good
analogy.
way. But in a good way. Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, in the light direction, as Richard Grove would say.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of which, do you know what I'm asking? What's the connection with Richard Grove? Because I came across Richard Grove many years ago through his interview with John Taylor Gatto,
Okay.
and then that was part of what was it called, the series or the kind of podcast that you had going then?
I believe that was I think that was Peace Revolution, wasn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And he had a few other guests on there, and it was a good, lively discussion they used to have on there. But what's
Yeah.
his connection to Liberty Radio now? Because I think you're connected to Grand Theft World. Grand Theft World is a Richard Grove thing, isn't it, as well?
Correct. So I'll try to make, because it is a fairly long story, but I'll try and make it as short as possible. So I had never encountered or heard of Richard Grove or John Taylor Gatto until after the scamdemic had started. I discovered Richard Grove through Grand Theft World. I want to say it was in like August or September, possibly October of 2020. It was somewhere around in that time. And, I had known about, the Bilderberg Group and the Trilateral Commission and Committee of 300 and the Club of Rome and all these different things, right? And of course, I'd also encountered folks like James Corbett, and I have nothing but the highest respect for Mr. Corbett.
Yeah.
But whatever it was, there was something about this cat, Richard Grove, that really struck a personal chord with me. And I don't even know if I can put my finger on it to this day. But I dove headlong into his work at that point. I became a massive fanboy of Grand Theft World, right? So much so that when I decided to walk away from my day job at the beginning of 2021, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take some of the savings that I have, I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to go through this autonomy course that Richard does.
Yeah.
And so, again, trying to condense the story as much as I possibly can here. Did all of that, got through the course, and ended up going to work for Richard's digital marketing company, which is called Autonomy Unlimited. I still work for them currently as a freelancer. But the whole time, I had been listening to Richard talk about wanting to be able to offer more value to the Grand Theft World community, specifically if there could be like another podcast or something that could be produced around that content. And that's kind of how Liberty Radio started. It started as an idea that I came up with. And of course, being somebody who has dabbled in music their entire life, and, seeing the work of James Evan Pilato with Media Monarchy. And I know there's a bunch of other independent radio stations out there doing similar things to what we're doing. I was like, hey, we can take some of this content that they're not able to get to every Sunday night on the main show. We can put it together with the independent music that's being created by liberty-minded individuals. And we can create something new to provide that additional value to the community. So that was kind of really how it all got started. It's been less than 2 years now that I've been from being exposed to Richard Grove to now getting to the point where, we're about to put out the 13th episode of Liberty Radio. And it just keeps kind of growing and moving and grooving.
Excellent.
maybe the parasites taking down the internet is the only thing that's going to stop it at this point. I don't know. But we just keep putting one foot in front of the other and learning our way forward.
Yeah, well, that's really awesome. I'm really pleased and honored to have taken some part in it. It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I hope it goes from strength to strength. I'll make a point of trying to find time as much as I can. It's really a tricky thing, isn't it? Sort of the amount of content, the number of shows and podcasts and things we all like to be able to digest, but it's hard to find the time. But I'm going to try and find the time to check in with you guys. I did check out one of your earlier shows a while ago, and I saw some links to another awake or resistance musician or something. So yeah, it's great what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for, affording us time out of your schedule to be able to have this conversation and to bring it to our audience, because to me, that's the most important thing about what we do. And that's the ability to offer exposure to the independent creators who might not otherwise be able to get it because of the censorship and all of that stuff that is unfortunately taking place in our world right now.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure, and genuinely, it's a pleasure to speak to somebody, another awake, liberty-minded individual. Because here in the UK, a lot of people who would call themselves awake, they're not actually liberty-minded. So as we were touching on earlier, but yeah, real pleasure to meet you.
Awesome. It was great to meet you as well. Before I let you go, let our listeners know, if they don't already, where they can find your work so that they can, consume it themselves and share it with folks that they know.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm on Twitter with Angry North. That's the whatever title. There's a YouTube channel which goes under the name of the Corona Bollocks Collective, which was just a name I just put up because I kind of imagined that I'd be sharing lots of other artists' material at the time. But that's how they can find me on YouTube, and also on Odyssey and on BitChute. And I'm on Facebook as well, just Angry North Music on Facebook. And actually, I'm on Amazon and Spotify, just as Angry North and Boris's Bitches. Boris's Bitches, by the way, was just the name Angry North was suggested by a friend of mine after he heard my first kind of name test song. Is it?
Yeah.
And then Boris's Bitches was another suggestion from a friend who, when I was talking about putting another band together to replace the one that fell apart that I joined. So it was just kind of thrown together. I just thought, well, I'll just use both names. Not too much thought applied to it, but yeah, that's how to find me.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to join us, Angry, and hopefully we can have you back on the show here at some point in the future and talk about better things. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I really hope so. Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you as well.
All right, cool. You wanna get on your phone straight after it. Get that rainbow frame around your Facebook pic. Telling yourself you're so good for taking it. Approval from family and friends gives you a kick. Pretty confident nothing bad will come from it. If it wasn't safe, you're sure they wouldn't give you it. Denial can protect your pride if you get sick. Or a martyr's badge of honor can make it seem worth it. Just trying to do your bit. But light on the TV, play against all you can see. Not an issue, it's not a thing. The average age of death's a ripe old 83. Vaccine taker! Vaccine taker! Vaccine taker! Non-quantifiable risk taker. Propaganda, news rags and TV. Just too big a ball for you to even see. Corrupt politicians and born media lackeys. Vain, empty-headed, sold-out celebrities. You don't think that it's strange how desperately they plead. Bribing you with donuts and beer and weed. You're hardly hesitating to give your freedom away. To hell with all your rights, you want to go on holiday. You couldn't care less about informed consent. It doesn't matter to you, it's not a thing. Don't know what it was, you don't care where it went. Vaccine taker! Vaccine taker! Vaccine
Mater, do you care? This is blackmail to push experimental medication. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. Surely that's a human rights violation. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. And the state has assumed unprecedented control. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. And it'll never just let go, now it's taken hold. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. Well yes, it's 2 vaccines for now, but they won't be the last. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. You'll have no choice forever, schedule's building fast. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. It's just part of a Chinese-style social credit scheme. It's not an issue, it's not a thing. A level of control that no one's ever seen. Can you really not see? Your brain's been washed and cleaned. Your big farmer's wet dream. You think you're in the clear, but you're gonna take a hit. The life you've known till now, you shut all over it. You shut all over it. Vaccine taker, freedom waster, liberty forsaker, tyranny embracer. Vaccine taker, you want the state to rape you. Vaccine taker, enemy enabler, collaborator. Social conformity, deference to authority. These proven human traits don't cause you any worry. Blind and numb to the most obvious of things. You can't even feel them yanking on your strings. Yanking! There are no amounts of tyranny you won't defend. Those who speak the truth you'll happily unfriend. Not in the way they say, but it matters what you do. The fewer who resist, the harder for those who do.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Angry North with the track that was taking us or bringing us back in from the interview. That's called Taker. And of course, as Angry said, you can find him all over the place on the various social ghettos. He's on YouTube, he's on Twitter, he's on Facebook, BitChute, Spotify, Amazon, and all the links, of course, are down in your show notes. You still awake, Phoenix?